Another live stream. Today, I wanted to talk about a certain aspect of co-parenting. I know that a couple of weeks ago now, let's see, I talked about how it's been 1 year since I lived in my own place for the first time ever in my life. I went from my parents' home to a college dorm to living with roommates. They were called sister households in the ICOC, the religious cult that I was a part of. Um, and then I got married at 24. And so now, at 35 years of age, or last year at 34, wow, why did that take so long? It's early. I was trying to, because I have a summer birthday. So I was like, where did my birthday lie? Um, quite warm. Uh, yeah, living on my own for the first time. So I talked about that, but today I wanted to talk about the co-parenting aspect of it all. And I thought you all could join me while I get ready for work. I'm not doing a full face. I've already applied some like primer. I use Il Makiage, which I like. I'm not getting paid by them at all. But I like it. It's my first go round with like real makeup. I've never done like the foundation and things like that before, but last year when I moved out on my own and was like, I can spend my money how I want and I can, do this self-love thing and explore and stuff like that. I was like, let's get some real makeup. Anyway, so anyone who is currently co-parenting or is thinking of maybe separating and pursuing a co-parenting lifestyle, I thought this might be helpful because there was just something about this whole venture that really I was not prepared for. You think through finances, you think through where are we going to live, we think through, are we going to be safe and, social aspects and maybe certain emotional things and the well being of the child and whatever, just surviving. But what I was not prepared for, because I was so tunnel vision on just getting out and being okay and making sure that everything was okay during the day to day, was how difficult transition days can be. And transition days being the day that your child will go from you to your ex or from your ex to you. And I don't mean behaviorally, that is a whole other aspect, especially, I'm in education. I've been a classroom teacher for about 10 years and admin for a bit longer than that. And we see kids' behavior is usually off after transition for a day or two, and that's to be expected. But for me, what was difficult was, um, oops, I tapped my mic. The emotions, especially if you're the parent who spends the majority of time with the child, and now all of a sudden they're just not going to be with you for however many days. That is challenging. And my child is young. And I thought before I hopped on here, I was like, okay, how do I tell the story in a way that is truthful and helpful, but is not telling too much of my son's story? I'm very, very aware that, you know, the internet is forever and this is his story and agency and what would he maybe not want shared when he gets older. So I'm trying to be sensitive to that. But let's just say there are times where it's very, very emotional. Um, and that is hard for months. For months after transitions, I would just get in my car and cry, or I would walk back to my home and cry. And I would have to call, I would call usually my best friend, Asha. Sometimes my dad, but Asha she'd either, probably not a call, but we use the Marco Polo app, the voice and video messaging app. And I would just like, oh my God, it's just so hard. And it would make me think of the stories about like mama whales when their children are taken from them or they're isolated from their children. You just hear no pun intended, the wailing, the weeping, their sounds, their groans, and they're crying out for their babies, or their babies are screeching for their moms. And I would just sometimes walk back to my apartment and sigh and let out a like, like it's just so hard. And I wasn't prepared for that. I was so, thank you so much. Someone said I'm pretty. Um, I was so focused on the day to day, the necessities, the groceries, the shelter, the this, the that. And it's like I could only see one or two steps ahead of me. And so even Asha told me, she was like, I was surprised that you didn't talk about this more when you were talking about your fears or your anxieties. But that makes sense that you were just kind of tunnel vision and focused on what's coming up. And still, it's been a year and it still gets me. I would say that the transitions are, they're better. They're better, but there are still certain times where it's just very, very challenging. And it could be challenging in a different way. And now that I got a mark. That's what I get for trying to go live while doing my makeup, knowing good and well I am not a true blue makeup girly to be able to do all of this at the same time. But even now, like that he's a little older, he's a year older. And every year, especially in early childhood, there's just exponential growth and change and maturity and development and things like that. So the way he processes and articulates is different. And so now that he's formed a deeper relationship with his dad, that there's even more crying when he comes back and stays with me. And I just hold him um and try to let him feel those feelings. And I'm like, it is hard. It is hard. Like watching your child's heart break and knowing you can't do anything about it. And the one thing that they want is likely not going to happen. The reunification, the bringing back of the family unit the way that it used to be. And it's hard because you hear a lot of like veteran parents who have been through this say they'll get it when they get older, they'll understand, they'll see. And it's like, yeah, but what do we do in the meantime? In the meantime, they don't understand, and it's so hard to watch. And I cannot overstate. I cannot overstate how heartbreaking that has been. And so if you are in this stage of trying to consider, do I want to do this? I'm not saying that I wouldn't do it again. I'm not saying not to do it, but I just wish I hadn't been so caught off guard. Like I literally felt, have you ever had the wind knocked out of you? So I know I don't look like a fighter, and I'm not a fighter, but I used to do Taekwondo. I actually have a black belt. And there's sparring and drills and things like that. And there's been a couple of times where I got a good punch to my solar plexus, and it's literally like like the wind, the phrase makes so much sense. Wind knocked out of you. It's like literally cannot breathe. And that's how I would feel sometimes, seeing how upset my son was. And then I think even the feeling when they're like, but why can't you come, please? Um, and knowing that at that little age, it just feels like, you just wonder, to them, does it feel like, why can't I go with mommy? Why is mommy saying no? And they don't know, they don't understand that there are legalities involved. They don't understand that, like, I can't keep you. I can't refuse to let you go. Um, and just wondering, uh, do they feel betrayed? Do they feel abandoned? And then you tell yourself, back away from the edge, back away from the edge, as long as their other parent is not abusive and horrible in the worst ways. Let them go. Let them go. And the good thing about kids, for the most part, is, and I can say this from being a teacher as well, that once they're around the corner or it's the next day or whatever, they've moved on. They could be entertained. And not to say that they aren't feeling things or thinking things deep beneath the surface, but it's all right. It's all right. But that's what I wish I would have known. I wish I would have been prepared for how hard it is. And so our schedule is that we do a week with me, a week with his dad. And people would ask, like, well, how is that going for you? How is that working? Do you like it? We chose it because we are both in education, early education, and my ex has gone up to 6th grade. And we just noticed that typically the like on the weekends, and the 2 days, 2 days, 3 days, or whatever, like just the more frequent switches, the instability for the child, um, it's just hard. It's hard. So we thought about, well, okay, what if we allow him and allow us to get in a flow for a week and then he goes back, a flow for a week and then he gets back. And what I always tell people when they're like, you know, how is it? Do you like it? Honestly, it sucks. There is no win. There is no win. Most of the like if you were married or in a long-term committed relationship where you saw each other as like forever partners, chances are that you did not decide to have this child with the thought of like we're going to share. We're going to share. There's going to come a day where we will not all be in the same home, right? That was nobody's intention. That wasn't our intention. And so, while the break can be nice, the quiet can be nice and things like that, and you learn to find the silver lining, it's hard. You want no days. You want no days away from your baby, no matter how old the baby is. You want no days where you're not having the help. Though there is a large population of people who say that they weren't getting help when they were in the same house together anyway. That's what you see a lot of women saying in these partnerships. Um, so yeah, it's challenging, but it works for us. And you have to give it time. You have to give it time to become the new normal. It's not like initially it was like, oh, this is so great. You really have to stick it out and persevere because one day, especially if this happens when they're fairly young, they won't remember much of anything else. They won't remember much of anything else. And you just have to persevere. But until then, until the old way of life kind of fades away from their memory, until you settle into what's new, until everybody is good with how things operate now, it's just, there's no other way I can say it except it sucks. It sucks so bad. And like I said, for anybody who's just hopping on, like I would cry. My son was crying, I would cry. I would try not to cry in front of him. And let me be very clear. I am not I'm not an advocate of like, don't cry in front of your kids. But I think in a moment like that, I don't need to fuel the heightened emotion, I don't need to fuel the heightened emotion. And so I would just suck it up and wait until they drove away and then release and talk to my friends or just breathe and be on my own or whatever. But okay, well, I don't want to prolong this. Um, if you have any questions about co-parenting, if you have anything that you wish you had known, something that caught you off guard, because you can't think of everything, right? Again, you're just so, especially I think, I don't want to say the woman, I think it's typically the woman, but if you are the partner that is leaving with a little more of a disadvantage, right? And not always, but often, women just recently were allowed to have bank accounts on their own, could open a business on their own. There's a wage gap. There's so much. And then traditional gender roles and things like that have the men in charge of everything and knowing the information for everything, right? And so if you're the woman or the partner who is kind of more in the dark, you're scrambling, you're thinking of necessities, you're thinking of surviving. And so there might be some things that you encounter once the ball really, really gets rolling, that it's like, I didn't think about this. I didn't anticipate this. So yeah, drop those in the comments if that relates to you at all. And like I said, there's probably more I could say, but I just want to be very, very sensitive to all other parties involved. Oh, I didn't do my bronzer. And I love a good bronzer. That's not the palette I want. So random, my actual bronzer palette, it fell and cracked like a month ago or something. So now I just use like a bronzy eyeshadow. We make do. We make do. But okay, y'all, this is it. I'm gonna go. I'm dressed and ready for work. I'm gonna go make my little protein shake. And yeah, just sending, not to sound cringe, but like love and light, hugs and support to anyone going through this transition or thinking about going through this transition. We've got it. We're in it together. And yeah, I hope this helps and maybe prevents you from being caught off guard as much as I